Majority of the population is living life on autopilot. Our whole idea of life is get the girl, get the guy, get the car, get the job, get the house, get the kids, get the better job, get the better house, get the office in the corner, get the kids on their way, get the grandkids, get the retirement watch, get the cruise tickets, get the illness, and get the heck out. And that is what a good life is. And if you're not careful, you'll end up on your deathbed questioning, where did my life go? There are a few days in your life which are just they're just epiphanic in the way that they open you up, they open your eyes up. And I remember one of those days when I was with a friend of mine, and he's a friend that was also my teacher, who's also my mentor in a way, and he's a friend that is very intelligent in itself. So I remember that day that we were together, and he shared an idea with me that I think about to this day, and that has impacted my life in a very positive way. And the idea is what he called the Luke Sleepwalker theory. He didn't actually call it the theory, but he called it the Luke Sleepwalker. And the advice that he gave me very clearly was to not become a sleepwalker. Now, what does that mean? What that meant in his word was that he said that most of my life I realized that I realized that I was sleepwalking. He said that I realized that I was just living my life like a normal person. Like I had my kids, I had my job, and I had all these colleagues, and I felt as if like everything is perfect, everything is okay, until a few things started to wobble. A few things started to wobble up my life. A few things started to really change, and they really changed in a way that was shocking. And he said that's when I realized that my eyes have opened up. Before that, and he says that I feel that I have these are his words, not my words. He said that I have wasted the portion of my life, that portion. And because I was sleepwalking, I didn't know I was living. It felt totally normal to me. I was like, I would get a call from my home, and I would just go rushing home. I would get a call from somewhere, and I would go rushing there. But it was not actually, I was not living in the true sense. And he said that after that awakening, after that, and the awakening was we'll talk about the awakening in a few minutes now, closer to the end of the video. But he said that the awakening was very, very difficult. And after the awakening, he felt that as if now I have realized the truth, and now I have woken up to a different level of reality. And the level of reality, it was all there, but I was the one who was not there. I was the one who was not conscious, even though I felt as if I was. And long story short, he said that most of the people around you that you will see, they are sleepwalking. They're sleepwalking in one way or another. They think that they are living their life completely okay ways, but actually they're not. They're sleepwalking. They are Luke sleepwalkers. A very funny story is that he takes the word from from Star Wars, and from Star Wars there's this character. The main character is known as Luke Skywalker, and the advice that he gave me that day was, don't become Luke Sleepwalker, become Luke Skywalker. And it was a very beautiful thing because it has stuck with me to this day. And I routinely ask myself this question: that am I sleepwalking? And you might be saying that. And one of the problems with sleepwalking is that it's very difficult to identify. It is very difficult to identify in the sense that you know that now most of the people around us are living on autopilot. They'll respond to you in a very good way. They'll eat. They'll carry out their responsibilities. They'll do all these things, but they are actually on autopilot. So then, how do you identify that? Like, how do you know if am I living on autopilot? What are the characteristics, or what are the proxy variables? Proxy variables are variables that are influenced in a second fashion. What that means is, for example, if wind blows, the proxy variable is the rustling of the leaves. So what are the characteristics or the proxy variables that I can look at, and I can say that, okay, I'm sleepwalking because of this? Because generally you don't know that when you're sleepwalking. You can't say wake up, or you can't hype yourself up, and you can't do that. So how do I know? How can I identify it? And it's very important. Before I go on, and before I tell you why turning the autopilot off, or why turning off the sleepwalking mode is very important, before I go on, let me say this, that there are people who are perfectly okay. They're perfectly okay with living a life of sleepwalking. They're perfectly okay with sleepwalking their life away. They don't want to wake up. And if you're one of those, happy sleepwalking to you. You can skip this video and you can go watch cute cat videos on the internet. There are a lot of them. This video is not for you. And for those of you who seriously want to wake up, welcome, and let's move ahead. So with that said, I hope that any of the not sleepwalkers, any of the sleepwalkers are actually not watching, and all the not sleepwalkers are here. So welcome. So the first part is really identifying that. And identifying is actually the very hard part, because the first step in any kind of change, if you want to make any kind of change, if you want to, and in this sense, if you want to turn autopilot off in your life, the very first step that you need to make is identify. Like, how do you identify whether you're living on autopilot? Is that you ask yourself a few questions. And in this analogy, the autopilot in your life is not that you are like in the sleepwalking phase that we are talking about your life. It's not sleepwalking in the traditional sense, like somebody is sleeping and he wakes up and he goes out and does these things, and it's not in that sense. It's a little bit different, and it's different in the sense that sleepwalking, when you're actually the actual sleepwalking, not the one that we are what we mean in the metaphorical sense, but the actual sleepwalking, it is much easier to identify. And it's much easier to identify that it doesn't last very long. It's like, even if you're in a habit, I don't know how long it lasts, but it's like, there's certain it is limited by certain boundaries, and there are limitations, and you can't actually cross that. What happens in this kind of sleepwalking, in the kind of autopilot, when you're living your life on autopilot, first, it's very difficult to know what the boundaries are, if there are any. And then the boundaries are just they're so open. It's like there is a chance that you might live your whole life and you might not even realize that I've been living on autopilot. And one of the key characteristics, that if you want to wake up to an idea, if you want to identify whether you're sleepwalking or not, is that the first thing that you have to ask yourself is, am I living a life that is following somebody else's idea of how a life should be? Is it following somebody else's quote unquote method of what a life should be? And most importantly, uh, does my life feel fulfilling to me? And if the answer to that question is not, there's a very good chance that you are on sleepwalking mode. Because as I said that the idea that we are given of life is get the girl, get the guy, get the car, get the job, better house, better guy, better family, or whatever. You go on and on and on, and until you get an illness and you get the heck out. That is actually an idea that is not yours. That is the idea that is given to you by society, by other people, and you have actually accepted that idea. And you think that, okay, this is a life, I should do this. And this is why it's very important to, if you want to wake up and if you want to identify, before waking up, if you want to identify whether you are in deep slumber sleep, doing all the normal things in life, a good question to start with is, ask yourself, if am I living an idea of somebody else's life? And even better than that is, if the answer is, if you cannot realize that answer, you might be in this level, you might be thinking, with this question, you might say that no, the idea is completely mine. But we don't realize that the idea that you say that is yours is totally borrowed, is totally accepted from someone else. This doesn't mean that you should not accept other people's ideas. That is a very smart thing to do. But the ideas that we accept as of how am I going to live my life, the problem is that we don't question them. We just accept them. We accept them as truth. We say that this is it. We say that, okay, because my parents lived this way, I'm going to live this way. Because I see this person, he lived this way, I'm going to live this way. Because that person seems like he has a good life, so I'm going to go follow that person. I'm going to go walk in the footsteps of that person. A really good example is that in the eastern part of the world, especially in Pakistan and India, everybody wants to become an engineer. And in the modern times, it's been everybody wants to become a software engineer. And I remember there was this story by some guy, I think it's the founder of Mind Valley Vision. And he said that one day he was He said that one day that he was in a car ride with his uncle, and his uncle was going on and on about how Bill Gates had built this Microsoft and how he was a software engineer, and he was actually imparting on vision that you should become a software engineer, and he was painting all this powerful, beautiful picture of what software engineers get, and he was creating Bill Gates as the example and vision for the next part of his life. He went to America, studied software engineering, until he actually stopped doing that. And the story goes as such that he actually got a job in Microsoft, and he was actually a few steps away from handshaking Bill Gates. They were actually at his house, all the new employees, and he didn't do that because he realized that I'm living an idea of life that is not mine. It's not mine. I'm just following in the footstep that somebody else told me. So that is a very good question that you have to ask yourself. And there was also this other story of a guy who was he wanted to become a lawyer, and the reason, if you I think it was a friend of someone's. I don't know who this guy is, but we'll say he's James. So James wanted to become a lawyer. James wanted to become a lawyer, and he was studying in, I think, one of the top laws university in America. And if you asked him like, why do you want to become a lawyer, he would tell you things like, oh, because I want to help the law, I want to protect the rights of people who don't have rights, or I want to stop injustice, and he would give some really ambitious things to you. And actually what he did was he got his degree, he became a lawyer, until he stopped doing that because it was not fulfilling, and then he went and became an artist because that was his actual thing. So most of the time we are pursuing a calling that is actually not ours. It is it is an idea of life that is imparted to us, and we feel like, okay, this is what I want, until when you go do the things and it doesn't feel that way, it doesn't feel that fulfilling to you, and you realize that, okay, this is not it. It's anything but not it. It's a signal that is very powerful, and it comes from within. So a very good question that, again, I'm asking you that question honestly as a friend, that are you following somebody else's idea of how you should live your life? And is that idea fulfilling to you? Does that idea get you exciting? And the answer to that is completely personal to you. I can't tell you how you should live your life. Only you can tell that to yourself. Okay? So with that said, let's move on to the next question. And the next question that you should ask yourself if you want to identify if you're living on autopilot or not, the next question is, this is a very good one. The next question is everybody around me totally happy with what I'm doing? Because a really good answer is, if you answer yes to this question, that everybody around me is really happy with what I'm doing, everybody's satisfied, then the answer to that question, if you answer yes to that question, that is a very good chance that you might be on autopilot. Because everybody around you should not be happy with what you're doing. Because when you are a very good proxy variable that you are on autopilot is that you are actually conforming. You're conforming to the idea that it relates to the first part that we talked about, that you're conforming to the idea that somebody else gave you. You're conforming to the idea that society gave you, your parents gave you, your friends gave you, someone somebody who you look up to gave you. Somebody gave you that idea, and you're conforming to that idea, right? And as you're conforming to that idea, everybody around you is actually happy. They are like, oh, look at this person, the things that he's doing is so great, and we support that. And if everybody is happy with what you're doing and nobody has a problem with you, that is not a good signal. Because mostly people, when I say this, I'm speaking for the general public, I'm speaking for majority of the people. Like I would say 98% of the people, they're living in what we call the culture scape. The culture scape is this interwoven web. It's all around you. You can't see it. It's an interwoven web of ideas, beliefs, tradition, culture, all of these things and rules of how you should live your life. And if everybody in that culture scape, as you're living, it's all around you. It's an interwoven web of all these things. If everybody around you is happy, and you know that you're living in the culture scape, and these are people who are living on the culture scapic level, and they're happy with you, that means that you're conforming to their ideas. And the ideas of the culture scape, they're mostly outdated. Tradition is nothing but peer pressure from dead people. Tradition is this, this lineage of ideas that keeps following, and some of them, maybe a few of them are good, but most of them are outdated. Most of the rules that they give you are also outdated. A good example is the education system. We're doing a whole series on it, on how the education system is outdated, rigged, and it's set up against you. And that is a traditional system that we are following, and it is an outdated system. There's also examples of other social systems and other form of systems that are actually outdated, but we are trying to make them work. We are just following that idea. So if you are fitting into these outdated systems, and people who are living in these outdated systems are actually happy with you, that means that you're actually on autopilot. That means that it's not your idea, it's their idea, and you're conforming to mediocrity. Because the culturescape is all about mediocrity. The culturescape is all about, okay, we know these ideas, they have made us safe, they're good, they were good ideas back then, they should be good ideas back now. Don't go and have ideas on our own. Please listen to these ideas, follow these ideas, and don't come up with your own conformity. So that is a really good question. The third question that you must ask yourself if you want to identify whether you're living on autopilot or not is, what are your goals in life? Like, what are the things that you want? And another, when you come up with this, and when you honestly ask yourself this question, and I would suggest that you stop this podcast and you actually do that, and then we'll talk about the next, and then we can move on. So I'm trusting that you have done that. So if you look at your goals and you see that most of them are actually what everybody else around me wants, it's the typical, the girl, the guy, the car, the house, again, I'm not saying, before I go on to say this, that your goals are the girl, guy, car, house, office, retirement tickets, basically the idea that has been given to you. That is also a very good sign that you are living on autopilot. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with wanting those things, but if that is what you're wanting, and that is all of it, like all that you want is a car, or all that you want is a few dollars in your bank account, or all that you want is just an idea that others gave you, others imparted upon you, most of the time those goals are not yours. Even though you might think that they are mine, they're not yours. They are what I call socially accepted goals. Somebody in society, somebody around you told you, and you kind of accepted them, and you were like, okay, this is it, I want to do this. This is my thing, and that's what I want to do. So if your goals are actually the opposite of that, is goals that are true to yourself, goals that you're pursuing because the act of pursuing them is what makes you happy. It is not that you want to pursue them so that you can tell everybody, you can get a medal and you can shine it, and you can see that how happy everybody around you is, but you actually want to do that. It's not because people are happy because of you, because it's not that you're making other people happy at the price of your own, but it's that you are making yourself happy first, and from that place you're going on and making a significant contribution in the world as well. So that is actually a good starting point. And the final question it kind of relates to challenges, like how do you respond to challenges? If your response to challenge is conforming, if your response to challenge is and the reason this is very important, like, you have to know your response to challenges, because when you're in the pursuit of goals that are true to yourself, it is a challenging journey. It is very difficult. It's not easy. It's and it has to be difficult, because it pushes you out of that comfort zone. It pushes you out of that conformity. It pushes you out of that layer of the culturescape, and it requires some resistance. You're pushing through the resistance, because a lot of people will try to pull you down. A lot of people, and they'll do so for good reason. They're not bad people. They just want to keep you safe. So they'll do so out of good reason, and they'll pull you down, and they'll do everything that they can. So that is why you feel challenged within yourself. And challenge is a good thing. It's not that if your response to challenges is that you run away from them, that is also a reason that is also a good sign that you're living on autopilot. Because challenge is a good thing. Challenge is a sign that you are moving ahead. Challenge is a sign that you are growing every day as a person, that you're growing every day as a human being, and you're becoming more and more a truer version of yourself. And that is where challenge comes in. Now, you might be saying, okay, now I have identified, you might be watching this and you might be thinking, okay, man, am I living on autopilot? completely okay. That we are not here to pass judgments on you. The very fact that you're becoming aware of this is very good. It is, I highly regard and respect you. Now the process of waking up is a completely different process, and waking up is very important. And waking up happens with this one thing, and we have talked about this in other videos and other podcasts as well. It starts with questioning. Everything starts with questioning, because there are these rules that I've given to you in the culture scape, and you start to question them. You start to question, like, okay, why this rule? I mean, I could come up with a better one. I could go on and build a better thing. Why this solution? Because I think I can think and I can build a better solution to this. And people will tell you, no, 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 this solution is the best one. You can't build a better one. That's unsafe. You might get killed. It's the old brain, it's the survival part of the brain talking. And but you actually start questioning those things, and you can actually, that is how any innovation on the planet happens. You start to question those rules that people have built, you start to question the methods that people have built, and you actually come up with better ones. That's innovation. Now the other part is to waking up is that you have to realize that in this world, all of the people that you're conforming to, all of the people, it's a very difficult process, even waking up. And that's why you have to realize that all of the people that you're conforming to, all of the people that you're kind of somewhere inside, whether it's subconsciously or unconsciously, you're seeking validation from the people around you, whether that's your family, whether that's your friends, whether that's the people you know, or whether that's your uh, extended family, people like that. Like, if you're seeking validation from them, you have to realize. Do you realize that you are going to be gone from this planet one day? That you're not going to remain here forever? And after you're gone, I think it's somewhere between in the next 100 or 50 years, everybody you know is actually going to be gone off this planet as well. And that brings me to this very fundamental concept that I have, and that is that nothing really matters in a big enough time scale, in a true enough time scale, I should say, because our time scale is actually short. It's not that time scale is big, it's relative, but in the true enough time scale, nothing really matters. Not just in time scale, but in a space scale as well, because the universe is so big. But I don't want to get into that part of the argument. But just when you realize that these people whom I care so much about, these people's opinion whom I care so much about, these people, their views on who I am and what I should do and what I should not do, I care so much about them, but they don't actually matter. And neither do I. Neither do what I do actually matters that much. It's just in the moment they might say a thing or two. In the moment they might criticize me. In the moment they might go out of their way, and they'll try to stop you. And by the way, the people in living in the culture scape, and when they're around you, they would go, like, they were literally, and they would do this out of good heart, as I said, because there was this story of an actor, and one of his teachers, actually. I was actually reminding myself of this story for some reason before doing this, before recording this. And the story goes something like this: that the teacher of this actor, he actually sat him down, and he brought him to a bar, and he actually sat him down, and in a very nice, polite way, got him a beer, got him a drink, and in a very nice way said to him, tried to make him realize that you should stop. You don't have it. Like, you should stop acting, because you're going to make a fool out of yourself. And he was doing out of good heart, and he told him to stop. That actor actually goes out. He's the actor that has starred in Murder Mystery, that movie. I actually forget his name. I can remember his face. Uh, this actor, he goes out to become a very successful actor, and after a few time, what he does again is, it's so beautiful that after a few time he goes back to the same bar, and the teacher is there, and instead of like trying to say, okay, look at me, how big of an actor I am, how successful I am, he goes there, shakes his hand, and gets him a beer. So that is very beautiful. But the part is that we're focusing on is the first part, that people who literally, I know of other stories of successful people, successful quote unquote, that who actually have the same stories. People who wanted to do something different, and people around them actually sat them down and said that what are you doing? What are you doing? So people don't ask you this question like, what are you doing? What are you trying to do? Why don't you just do things that everybody else around you does? If people don't say that to you, you're actually on the wrong path. So that's why you have to realize that nothing really matters. These people around me whom I seek validation so much from, who I'm seeking to get acceptance from, and you're trying to do all these things, but it doesn't really matter in a long enough time scale. People that they're actually going to be gone off this earth, and you trust me, we are not that important. Really, we are not that important. We are not as important as we think we are, and we are not as important as we think we are to the people around us as well, because one day they'll be gone, you'll be gone, nobody's going to remember you or me or anybody else that you know. No matter how successful, no matter how big of an emperor, no matter how much wealth you have, it's all going to go away once. And that is the beautiful part of life. People look at that as a haunting part, but I think that is a very beautiful part, because that gives me more room to play. That gives me more room to create things. I don't want things to stay. It's okay. It's like a new level. It's like I play this game, and like no matter how much, it's like I'm playing in the casino, and no matter how much I win, when I leave the game, I leave it on the table. I don't want to take it with me. It's like I leave it on the table and I leave room for somebody else to play. That to me is a higher thing to do, a morally higher thing to do, other than keeping the chips with me and going and cashing them out or something. All right. So, and the other thing is, stop conforming. On this topic, we have talked a lot. You can go and watch the video we have on the meaning of life. You can go and watch the video we have, another video podcast we have. You can go watch those, and you can actually learn why conformity is actually the biggest thing that is limiting people. Now, with that said, it brings me to the part of awakening. And how does awakening happen? How do we actually awaken? The very process of awakening. We have talked about this in 3 parts. The first one was realizing, identifying. The second one was the first one was identifying. The second one was starting to wake up, and the third one is actually waking up, actually the awakening. And how does that happen? And this is where I learned this concept long ago, and it's a very beautiful concept. And it is a Japanese concept of 2 Japanese words, actually. The first is Kensho, the other is Satori. Kensho in Japanese means pain, and Satori in Japanese means inspiration or enlightenment in that sense. So, the only 2 paths to change, the only 2 paths to waking up from this autopilot and going to and doing something that's original to you, that's true to you, living a life that is original and true to you. It's actually, and this is where, back to my friend, his awakening actually didn't happen through Satori, not through inspiration, but it was actually through a lot of pain. When things in his life started to go haywire, that's when he woke up. That's when, and that is also true for myself, that I didn't realize this because of my smartness or my genius. I don't think if I have any of those two. So it was actually through pain. It was actually through all of this emotional, mental pain that I felt, and that actually forced me to look at life in a different way, and come up with ways of my own, because the ways that other people told me, they were not working. So I had to. It's like the pain was a fuel that I used, and I had to come up with ways that were of my own, and the pain was the thing that is driving me. And something about me is, I feel that the pain is the thing that is driving me to this day, because one of the ways that you can change is through Kensho. The other one is through Satori. And these are the only 2 ways that change can happen. There's no third way. It's like you don't either you conform, or either you go through a Kensho, or either you go through a Satori. And out of Kensho and Satori, most of the changes that you'll experience in your life are through Kensho, not Satori. Kensho is this. It's like the universe's ways of slapping you. It's like when life slaps you, and it's when life makes you hit rock bottom. That's when you actually come up. Because when you're in the middle, when you receive this kind of pain, this is again true in psychological reasons as well. if there's a kind of pain in your life, but it's not that much, like if you can just bear with it in that sense, you won't do squat about it. You won't do anything about it. But if that pain gets so, like if you have a minor cut in your body, you would say, okay, and you have to take care of it and all that, but you won't probably care too much about it. But when you have this kind of pain, that like if I, very graphic, but if I take a stake and I put it through your leg, through your thigh, that would be a very difficult physical pain, and you would have to rush to the hospital. That pain would make you move. Same is true with emotional or mental things as well. That if there's a pain that is, it's a bit nagging, you would do your best to, like, okay, I can cope with it. But if it's a pain that is like it's a stake through your leg, if it's at that level, you would do something about it, I guarantee. So the thing is, the universe, it is like you have all these small things in your life that you should change, but you're like, okay, I can bear with them, until you have somebody actually puts a stake through your leg, and now you have to change them. Now there's no way. And this is why you see people that they have health issues, but they're not that much, so they're like, okay, I can cope with it, I can take a few pills. But when it comes to a stuff that is some serious stuff, like some serious disease, like diabetes or something like that, it actually makes them move. And even when diabetes, I've seen people who are diabetic and they're like, okay, we can take this pill and do this, and they're coping. They don't actually want to solve that problem. There for two reasons. One of them is actually the pain is not too much. The second one is that they don't know that there's a solution that is not traditional. So more of that is because the pain is just not too much for them. So either it's Kensho, you have some form of pain in your life, and the secret to do this is, if the secret to do this is accept and embrace the pain. Instead of running away from it, instead of escaping it, accept it, embrace it, make it your friend. Because in that pain, there's a lot of potential for growth. There's a lot of potential for that pain to be used as fuel and to be turned into something really beautiful, turn into something to drive you in life. Other way is inspiration. And inspiration, I give the example of inspiration is like, let's imagine all of your life you're living in a box. It's like Plato's allegory of the cake, but in a different, it's like the box allegory. You're living in a box, and that's all your life is. You're living in a box that is 5'6", and it can completely fit you, and that's where you're living. If one day you actually poke a hole in that box and you look out and you see the rainbow or the mountains or something, and that actually it is so exciting, so emotionally appealing of an experience, you would actually, and that is, you actually saw that for like 1 or 2 seconds, but the emotional experience was so appealing. That is inspiration. It will actually make you move. You would want to break through that box. You would want to do different things to it. You'll try to break it and actually go out. That is an example of how you can get out of your comfort zone if you're inspired by a life that is higher. If you're inspired by a life that is, if you're inspired by something that emotionally appeals to you. So that is the other thing that change can happen. So either it's Kensho, either it's Satori. Now with that said, if you have not subscribed to my newsletter where every Thursday I send bite-sized wisdom to help you become a better human being, the link to do that is in the description below. And if you have not gotten my ebook, my free ebook on the 6 principles to lead a truthful life, the link to that is also in the description below. Go ahead, download it. It's totally free and use it. Now, stop living on autopilot. Wake up. If you have enjoyed watching this video, don't forget to watch this video on my side. It also relates to physics, philosophy, and personal development. And also, don't forget to subscribe. Continue seeking truth and become a truth seeker.